I want to ask you all to do something for me. I want you just to take a moment and think back to a time where you found your people, where you felt accepted and understood. And now I want you to hold that memory, that feeling in your mind, while I tell you a story. So, I first came to Brussels to work in the EU institutions. And when you're really into international politics or diplomacy or governance, you're kind of used to people not caring about your interests. And then you come to the EU quarter, and you're surrounded by people who share those interests. People whose idea of a good time is a policy document, a nice cup of coffee. In short, you're surrounded by nerds. And it is amazing. So amazing, in fact, that it's very easy to lose yourself in that feeling and forget that the rest of the world exists. But that forgetting can be a dangerous thing, and it's not something unique to Brussels. All around the world, there are highly educated, highly mobile, highly privileged international workers who treat the cities and the communities that they live in as a decor, as a style, as background music for different periods of their lives. But this is not a healthy way to live. It's not a human way to live. People are social animals. We need community, connection, and comfort from the places we live in. We need to feel like we're from somewhere. We need to put down roots. And it's easy to forget that we also have an impact on the places that we live in. Our presence changes lives and transforms local economies. And as newcomers, we have the potential to contribute significantly or to damage carelessly. This is what my organization, our organization, is all about. Fundamentally, we are a series of events, meetings, and experiences, the goal of which is to bring the international community of Brussels closer to the city that they live in. We link them up with the politicians and the missions, the causes and the campaigns, and we help them learn how they can contribute. We called ourselves Restless Brussels. As a reflection of our values, we are restless. We're not revolutionary, and we're not ranting and raving. We approach the city and its residents with curiosity and respect. And there's no shame involved. Whether you've been here for 10 minutes or 10 years, the best moment to start building links with your new home is the moment you arrive. And the second best moment is now. While it is not an issue unique to Brussels, Brussels is a particularly pertinent place to start doing this work. In a modest city of 1 million, 50,000 people work for international institutions, and tens of thousands more work in the companies, think tanks, law firms, NGOs, and other organizations that surround those institutions. And all this in the context of an incredibly diverse city, a city where 2/3 of the residents were not born with Belgian nationality. The international residents of Brussels are as much a part of this city as anyone else. Despite this, they are criminally underengaged. Few vote in local elections or get involved in projects outside the EU quarter. So much so that we refer to it as an EU bubble, unpoppable, impenetrable. Isn't that weird? These people are politically active, engaged. They have good jobs and time on their hands. And in any other context, they'd be ticking all of the boxes for local activism. One of the things that stops them is their so-called expat status. an unjust word that sets them apart from other immigrants, ascribing them certain privileges, but not the same responsibilities of integration. But that is a topic for a different talk. While my organization, our community, started with trying to address this issue, my own story started with having a kid. And so my son is German, Irish, Kazakh, and he was born in Belgium. So you might ask where he is from. I'll tell you where he's from. He's from Brussels. And I wanted to start to get to know his native city and my adopted city better. I wanted to invest in its future for the both of us. So, I have another question for you all. Hands up, how many of you know your neighbors? Now, hands up how many of you know your neighbors well? Well enough to drop in for a cup of coffee, or maybe have a conversation about the neighborhood. Right. So I started asking myself this question, and I didn't really like the answer. And I also started looking at my neighborhood differently when my son arrived. In terms of potential babysitters, yes. But also in terms of road safety, in terms of air quality, in terms of green spaces I could go and play with him in. And given that I didn't know my neighbors yet, I wanted to speak to some people about this. So I ended up joining a couple of local organizations. One of them was Heroes for Zero, a road safety collective here in Brussels. I made a lot of friends, and I learned a lot. And after a little bit of time, I started to ask myself whether other people like me would benefit from this experience. So I decided to run a little experiment. I set up a community meeting without really having a community yet. I booked a room, I invited a local politician to come and speak, and I made a few social media posts targeting this mobile international community, partially because I saw a need, but partially because I was a part of it. And the first responses were not promising. I was told that this community didn't care about Brussels. I was told that the room I had booked was too big and I would never fill it. And I'm not going to lie, it started to get to me. So I resolved that if no one showed up, I'd take no photos, I wouldn't tell anyone, and I'd never speak of the project again. But that evening, 70 people came. They had questions, they were engaged, they were informed, and I felt like I was onto something. Since then, our community has grown beyond recognition. It's been a year and a half, and in that year and a half, we have, with a leadership team of 7 people and a budget of nearly 0, run 50 meetings in different neighborhoods around the city with the dedicated support of allies and volunteers. From intimate little dinners in people's houses with gossip and off-the-record insights, to big, loud community meetings with people shouting and laughing and sharing. Our community now has around 3,000 people in it. And it's not just internationals, it's Belgians too. They're curious about us sometimes and what we're doing, and other times they just want a new context, a new way to look at their city. We've also been mobilizing our community to do things. This year was a very big election year all around the world, and obviously the most important election, the election that everyone was paying attention to, was the Brussels municipal elections in October. So, we mobilized on this. And our volunteers hit the streets, people like Sabina, Leon, and Ali, to register our community to vote, our demographic. We ran meetings and debates all over the city. And it was a success. More than 15,000 new people registered to vote in our demographic. We've also been helping people get involved in civil society. Some connecting them with local Brussels NGOs, blending local knowledge with international energy. And others we've been teaching to set up their own organizations and movements. People like Tamara, like Klaus and Erica, who set up Housing for All, which seeks to mobilize the international community on the issue of homelessness. And after every meeting, every event, I hear the same thing. Thank you. I've been looking for this. And after hearing that over and over and over, I'm convinced that it's not a lack of motivation, but a lack of avenues to get involved. People are nervous. They feel like they lack local context. They feel like their language levels aren't up to scratch, especially when it comes to emotional or technical conversations. And sometimes they're just inert. They need a kick. And we're not alone in Brussels. We've had people get in touch from Marseille, from Prague, from Dublin, from Luxembourg, from Warsaw, and many other cities besides. They want to build the same connections, and they're wondering how to get started. So today, I want to offer you the same 3 pieces of advice I offer them. The 3 things that I think have made our community a success. The first is simplicity. The idea was very simple. We speak to the people shaping the city in different ways. All we need is a room, a topic, and a speaker. This simplicity allowed us to save energy, but also to stay focused on what our mission was. We kept internal meetings to a minimum, and we focused on outcomes. We focused on actions. We focused on getting people into conversations. The second thing was consistency. From the very beginning, I committed to running a meeting every 2 weeks, and we never dropped below that. Occasionally, we would rise above it, and in the 2 weeks before the elections, we ran about a dozen meetings, and I still haven't entirely recovered. But we were also consistent in quality. We would always answer the questions, why is this important, and what can you do with this information? Because if you're asking for people's attention, it's a question of respect to be consistent in delivering. The third thing was enjoyability. Our meetings were political and policy discussions, but they were also fun. They were moments to meet your neighbors, to have a chat, to debate and discuss. In the summer, we had a Restless Brussels pool party, where we discussed outdoor swimming facilities. We had walking tours where experts showed us the city from different perspectives. This making friends and having fun became a core component of what we did. That's not to say that what we were doing wasn't serious, just that serious doesn't need to be boring. So now we're looking to the future. So far, we've focused on our community and figuring out our identity and kind of finding our place in the city. And now we want to strengthen our contributions to the city through civil society and also connecting with other communities in the city. Brussels is full of bubbles. Moroccan bubbles and Congolese bubbles and Francophone bubbles and Flemish bubbles and political bubbles and activist bubbles. And we want to start popping some of these bubbles and having discussions about the shared project that is Brussels. It won't always be easy. We won't always agree with everyone. But I think we're quite well positioned to have these conversations. Because we're a very international group with lots of different nationalities, lots of different languages, lots of different views, just like the city that we are in. And like my son, we all have identities layered on top of one another. But while our different nationalities are about a shared history, being here together in Brussels is about a shared future. Thank you.